Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grieving process. Join Dave and his guests now as they share practice tips and tools that you can start using immediately to help get you through this day. Now, here's your caregiver host, Dave Nassaney.
Hey, from Los Angeles and Manhattan, if you count Adrienne. Big LA and Big Apple, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on a bunch of platforms, YouTube, iTunes, Spreaker, you name it, we're on it. And also at caregiverdave.com, voted the #2 best caregiver podcast of 2017. And we have an exciting show planned for you today. We did have an exciting show planned for you today, but we also have an exciting show planned for you today because our original guest who works at the White House couldn't show up. He must have had an emergency. So I'm sure he'll be with us next week perhaps. But we're going to do, Adrienne and I, Adrienne Gruberg of the Caregiver Space, we're going to be talking about something that's been in the news lately, the grief process, because lots of suicides out there, lots of cancer diagnoses, lots of bankruptcies, lots of divorce notices. I mean, you name it, people are going through loss at an astounding rate these days. And a lot of them don't even know what the grief process is, and we're going to be talking about it. And we're both very knowledgeable about it. So today, I just want to say welcome to Adrienne. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you.
And last week, we had a great show. We were talking about other things, Adrienne and I. You remember what we were talking about, Adrienne?
We were talking about things that no one never knew about us.
That's right. And it was a great show. And these shows where we don't have guests and we just kind of play it by ear are great.
Talk issues, yeah.
Are great shows. And so you're in store for another great show. And I just want to say that my caregiver website, caregiverdave.com, and any of our networks, you can hear any of our shows that we have done. There's over 200 of them now. That's so hard to believe. And I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you making us #2. We appreciate all you do for caregivers, because we're assuming you're a caregiver. And so I should say we appreciate all you do for the people that you care for. And some of you actually do things like we're doing. I know several caregivers who are encouraging caregivers as well. I think of her name, Cassidy Bastian is who I'm thinking of.
Oh.
And she does a whole thing, and she's a caregiver. She's a paid caregiver, but just because you're paid doesn't mean you're less empathetic, and doesn't mean you're not as great as an unpaid caregiver. It just means that you're a caregiver. So, welcome to the show. Adrienne's having some video issues, but
again,
she'll come in and out. So. You all know what she looks like.
Well, last time there was another technical difficulty glitch.
Yes, I'm going to just get to the bottom of this, and next time we'll have it all figured out.
Okay.
Did you ever call Verizon about your internet speed, perhaps?
My speed is right up there.
Yeah. All right. So this week we're going to talk about the grief process. Do you have any experience in the grief process, Adrienne?
Which part of it?
Well, let's start at the beginning. We'll go through the middle, and then we'll make it to the end.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, you go through the grief process when I was a long distance caregiver for my parents. My father passed first. He was the caregiver. And he was the parent that I was closer to, and I did grieve for him for a good while. But my mother passed 3 years later, I have been her long-distance caregiver. It was a more intense experience
Hmm.
because I was caring for someone I didn't like. Um,
There's a lot of people caring for people who they don't like, isn't that true?
Absolutely. There are a lot of women, especially caring for mothers that they've always had issues with.
Mm. Yeah, who
That's
doesn't have
very,
issues with their mother?
well,
Are there a
see,
few people out there?
it's
Yeah.
very common that daughters who have had issues with their mother will end up taking care of their mothers, because not always, it frequently, most often actually, falls to the daughters rather than the sons.
Yeah,
Um,
and I wonder, do those daughters and mothers who are now in a caregiver relationship ever resolve those issues? Ever?
well, I certainly didn't. I, I mean,
Because they're just too
the
deep and they're
grief,
too
the grief process,
long-reaching.
the grief process in terms of my mother was, I grieved never having the kind of mother that I wanted to have. She was incapable of being the kind of mother that I wanted, and once I got over realizing that and accepting it, and it was like next, I'll just
Mhm.
go on with
Did
my life.
did you ever try to get her to understand?
Of course,
No, it didn't
but
work out.
it just never worked out. It was a horror show, really.
Yeah,
Um,
with Charlene, my wife, she had issues with her mother as well. She never felt like, she was good enough or all that stuff. And so when she was, it was before her stroke, she wrote a letter to her mother,
hmm
and it just spelled out everything. And yeah, World War III, I mean, it just made it worse.
yeah,
And so I think you just come to the realization that, hey, it's never going to get better. And in fact, she went up there recently. The goal was to spend a week with her,
uh-huh,
and after 3 days, they were at each other's throats.
of
And
course.
Charlene can't talk, and she was screaming, and
hmm
mother was screaming, and it's like,
I
over some silly little thing that
sure.
the clothes were on the bed, and they were now on the floor, and her mother says, "Why would you throw my clothes on the floor?" And of course, Charlene's trying to communicate it wasn't me. She says, "Well, there's only two of us here, and it wasn't me." Just really
Sure.
explosive accusations, and so for those of you who have hope that one day, I'm sorry to dash your hope, but it's possible. I mean,
It
it's
is. It
possible.
is possible. I mean, I know.
Maybe the exception rather than the rule.
I mean, Lisa Hirsch,
Hmm.
my mommy, my hero.
Hmm.
You've had her as a guest.
Yes.
Her mother has Alzheimer's. She had a lousy relationship with her mother until her mother became ill,
Hmm.
and she she's a long distance caregiver. Her brother's the one that lives in Florida, and
Hmm.
she'll visit for a month or two. And when she's there, she's really there, and she talks to
Hmm.
her mother every day. Um, she just was able to warm up to her mother once the venom seemed to be gone once she got Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And it's, she grieves the fact that the person that her mother is now, she adores, and that person is ill,
Hmm.
and so that's her grief there. But she and her mother did. I don't know what's going on, Dave.
I'm just putting your picture up there
Oh,
so we can see you.
okay. You mean you can't because you're frozen?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
you're
just you. I
frozen.
think there's an issue with your internet. But no, I can see myself move, and now they can see you, so we're good.
Okay.
All is well in
So
paradise.
should I start again with Lisa or
No, no, we heard it all.
okay?
So there is
So,
hope. So don't give up hope if Lisa, and she's Jewish, right?
yes, she is.
So that's even makes it harder. So if Lisa Hirsch
Oh,
and her
those
mother
cliches, yeah.
can resolve their issues, then there is hope. So don't give up hope. You can be the exception rather than the rule. It just wasn't so for Adrienne. It wasn't so for my wife, Charlene.
No, it
But,
wasn't so for me. And I mean, I knew it wasn't so for me when I moved back to New York from Africa. We moved back under very difficult, uh, in a very difficult situation. The
hmm
circumstances were really grotesque. And I had written my mother that, and it was the Jewish high holy days that we were going to be coming back. And we had a dog at the time. Um, and I wrote my mother this letter from Africa explaining to her that we were coming home, that it wasn't my husband's fault, that because of the situation, I really needed her to be gentle and kind and not to just go railing away on everything. And
and just
I
couldn't
might
do
as
it, could
well
she?
have not written because she was a bat out of hell. I mean,
Mm,
she was awful. She wanted to know why we hadn't left the dog in Africa,
mm.
which to me was unthinkable. But we weren't staying with her. We were staying with my friend, my best friend,
hmm
because they don't allow dogs where my mother was living at that time.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't want to stay with my mother anyway, but it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I mean then the after mourning my relationship with my mother that I was never going to have, um, there were situations, like when I got my divorce, grieved. You grieve the marriage. You blame yourself for things while
hmm
you're deciding whether or not you really were the one that was to blame or what the situation was.
hmm
Um, I think a, I think most people who go through divorces have those bouts of self-questioning,
Yeah.
and then there was grieving jobs that I lost or didn't get, or businesses that failed, or clients I didn't get. There are when things are very emotionally charged and the outcome is very weighty. Um, if it's a negative outcome, you can grieve that. It just happens. And then we grieved when we got Steve's diagnosis um, of cancer in 2005. And then we grieved when his mother was diagnosed in 2007. And then we started to pre-grieve because I knew what the outcome was ultimately going to be, and I think Steve did too. It was just a matter of how long and how much time we were going to be able to buy.
Mm.
His mother lived to be 93, so
Wow.
she had a good long life. Um, but there are so many different phases of grieving, and Steve's been gone 7 years now. When he died, um, it's not as though I went into any kind of a grief spiral because I'd been writing about the way I was feeling. He and I talked about all the things that I was feeling, that he was feeling. We got to share all of that.
hmm
And 7 years later, I have moments where I grieve. And
Yeah.
I think that's normal. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've moved on. Um, I'm still living in our loft. Um, I started the Caregiver Space as a result of his illness,
Hmm.
but every now and then it just comes out of nowhere. I mean, I was driving my car and a song came on the radio that was not quite our song. It's a silly song by Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis from a movie that they did called Partners. And my house in the country, at the beach, has posters from the movie because we really, really love that movie and we really love Dean Martin and loved that stupid song. And it came on this weird mix of stuff on the radio. And it was like Steve was saying hello to me because I pass the cemetery every time I go out to the beach house.
Mm.
And it's just like a little wave, like, hi, I'm here, And I get sad for a minute and then I go on.
Yeah.
It's 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 a process. And I don't feel I think I'm lucky because I have no regrets about my relationship with Steve and the time I had caregiving. I was very good at it. He knew it. He was very appreciative. And that left me feeling better about myself and stronger. So the grief was lessened because I've been doing it for so long, anticipating it. And yes, of course, it's different once the death actually occurs, but I was ready for it.
Yeah, I think they call that anticipatory grief.
That's what they call it.
Fancy
Yeah.
word. And
Anticipatory.
everyone grieves differently, I mean, some people grieve quicker than others. Some people take forever to grieve. Some people, it seems, grieve forever.
I mean, when Charlene had her stroke, didn't the two of you grieve?
Yes, absolutely. I was grieving because I lost my wife. She was grieving because she lost her body and her
Right?
car and her house and her granddaughter relationship. And, life was hell.
Mm-hmm.
She was angry and bitter most of the time, and you always hurt the ones you love, the ones you shouldn't hurt at all, and I was
Because
the
you
only
know
one
they'll be
around.
there.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know they'll
almost
be there.
wasn't because it was almost too much to take, but
Mm.
it took 2 to 2.5 years for her to get over it before she finally, she was in a state of depression and anger, and she would just keep
Sure.
switching gears,
Mm-hmm.
because, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with 5 stages. Many of them adhere to that. Some people believe there's others, but mostly she's probably right because we all go through a
Mm-hmm.
period of denial that this really isn't happening.
Right?
And like my mother-in-law, she is in a constant state of denial, which means she's delusional now, which is a mental illness. She doesn't believe that there's anything wrong with her memory, so she chooses instead to believe that somebody breaks into the house regularly every day and throughout the day, stealing her stuff that she can't find, instead of believing that perhaps she misplaced it. It's in her mind. To admit that that's happening would probably, and there's probably a whole bunch of mechanisms going on in her mind to
Has she been
self-preservation.
diagnosed with
Not
dementia
officially
or
yet. Not
Alzheimer's?
officially yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to find a doctor who will actually do that. I don't know why.
I
Is
don't
there
either.
legal liability if they're wrong?
I
I
don't
just
know.
don't get it. And so she's still living alone, and she keeps missing doctor appointments that are supposed to go because,
Mm.
the person who's supposed to take her is a caregiver for her parents, and something always comes up.
Right.
And so, it's not her fault. She's got too much on her plate. And
Huh.
I mean, I could do it, but then she doesn't really trust me. I'm trying to steal her house and
Right.
all of that stuff. But the denial is a big one. It's basically the mind is just trying to cope with the
Sure.
news that
Yep.
it's probably saying to yourself, it's too much for you to accept this, so I'm going to help you out and help you to just think that there's still hope, that maybe they didn't die, maybe they're just sleeping and they're wrong, or maybe the doctor got the tests mixed up and you're not the one with 3 months to live, maybe it's somebody else, or just all sorts of things. And with my mother-in-law, of course, she should have snapped out of that a long time ago, but she's still there. So
Yeah.
years, 2-3 years now, she's just living in this world of delusions. And you could have a wonderful conversation with her for hours and think there's not a thing wrong with her.
Sure.
But she had a visit from my granddaughter, who she hasn't seen since she was a little girl. And her dad came down from Seattle to pick them up from California. On the way up, they dropped off. They didn't drop off. They stopped off and brought her an In-N-Out burger and put an In-N-Out hat on her head and took a picture of her. And so I called her a couple of days later and says, "Hey, I heard you got a visit from so and so." She goes, "Who?" I says, "Keely." And she goes, "No, I haven't seen Keely since she was a little girl." And so the one visit in like 20 years, and she can't even remember it.
Yeah.
And when I kept pressing her, I says, "Yes, they gave you an In-N-Out hat and everything." Finally, she says, "Oh, Lord, that happened a long time ago."
Yeah.
And so I just didn't press. I don't argue with her anymore because
No,
it's
you
just
just have to
hopeless.
let it go.
There was a time that I tried to believe that I could get through to her, and I would lose every argument, and it would only make things worse. And so now it's sad to come to an opinion that something is hopeless, because I don't usually think that way. For me, there's always hope. Like the kid shoveling manure, just believing that there's got to be a pony under all this horsepower somewhere.
Yeah.
So for me to actually consider something hopeless, it's got to really, 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 really be bad.
Yeah.
And it is. It is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
I know, but
we all
I
have our
mean, you're
hopeless
not
cases,
not
don't we?
alone in that situation either.
Yeah.
There are so many people going through distress as those close to them.
Yes,
Whether
they
or not they're
are.
beloved or not, they're still close to them and mean something.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And it's just hard to hard to accept. So little that stands a chance of changing. In most cases, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, it is. It's a sad, as Elton John. It's a sad situation.
And it's getting more and more absurd.
Let's take a break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Dave Nassaney, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. And he now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his incredible caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first, before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today or buy one for your special caregiver. On sale everywhere and at caregiverscaregiver.com. Hey, you're back. And we're back
Can you
with
see me?
Adrienne Gruberg. I can see you, but you're not moving. Oh, there you go. Anyway,
I'm gone again?
you're gone again. So we're talking about grief process. And, we were talking about denial and how the mind is just trying to protect yourself from too much pain. And because I guess, a tragic situation can send somebody into a nervous breakdown. So there's a lot of defense mechanisms that the subconscious will try to do.
Sure.
Because the subconscious only knows what we tell it. That's why it's so important to give it positive words, because your subconscious is kind of stupid. I did a talk one time, your subconscious is stupid because it only knows what you tell it. And if you tell it, oh, I just know I'm going to get cancer. Oh, I just know I'm going to lose that job. Oh, I just know they're going to fire me. The subconscious is in there like, then the master control saying, oh, okay, I'll make that happen. Thank you. And on the contrary, if you believe that, everything is going to be fine, this is going to work out, I'm going to get that job, then it says, oh, okay, yes, I can do that. And things will just happen, I don't know if it's the law of attraction, or everyone's got a different term for it, power of positive confession, whatever it is. It's always better to believe that something's going to happen. I like to say, it doesn't guarantee that it will happen, but if you believe that it won't happen, I guarantee you it won't. Because that's just the way. I mean, that's 64 years, but as an adult, 44 years of hard knocks experience telling you that's how it works. Mm-hmm. And then after people finally get out of their denial, when they realize that, okay, this is reality, I choose not to be delusional, then either anger will happen or bargaining will happen, and I give the example many times, if it's a breakup of a boy or girlfriend, they say, oh, please, can't we just be friends? Or if it's a diagnosis from the doctor, that you're going to die in, 3 months, please, what do I have to do to make it a year? Or if it's bankruptcy, it's, please, can't I just keep my house? I don't care about anything else. And, but when it comes to death tends to be a little unnegotiable.
Yeah.
Unless we believe in God, then we figure, well, God has control even over death. Have you ever tried to bargain your way out of a problem?
Negotiate.
Yeah, negotiate is the word also.
That's with clients I was fighting to keep.
Mm-hmm.
Based on information that was given to them by somebody who didn't like me.
Somebody doesn't like you? That's unbelievable.
Well, somebody was trying to get an account away from me. So they were, So did
it work? Did you get him back?
Yep.
Oh.
I wore a red suit. I went in there, was just as powerful as could be, and I got him back. I reminded them of everything I had done for them, and that they wouldn't be anywhere near where they were without me. And what had this person done for them? And
did you talk bad about the person who told them what they?
Not at all.
Okay.
I barely mentioned her.
That's good. You just accentuated the positive and minimized the negative.
Yep.
Like the song goes.
It was the right thing to do. I think bad-mouthing the other person is not the best way of negotiating, unless you're President of the United States, but we won't get into that.
That was like an uppercut. You didn't see that one coming. Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. um, yeah, I mean, I I never went into denial about anything. That's the one thing that I will say. When something
Good for
was
you.
told to me, I just dealt with it. I faced it and dealt with it. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot
Hmm.
change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And by God, step one from all of the anonymous programs gets me through every day. Um,
Amen.
I would say, is this something I can do something about?
Yep.
The other thing was, well, I'm only going to die once. It's only going to be a life and death situation for real once in my life. And I got braver that way,
Yeah.
just facing up to things.
Yeah. So generally, when someone gets over the denial, okay, this is really happening, and then
Yeah,
the bargaining, okay, I'm not negotiating myself out of this one, then they generally get angry.
yeah,
And anger is a double-edged sword. It can be a good thing. It's good to be angry as opposed to just keeping it inside of you. I
I
mean,
agree.
even Jesus got angry, and he started overturning the tables and so, if Jesus can do it, I guess we can all do it. Um, so what are some of the things you got angry about?
Um, when Steve's mother passed away, Steve and I finally had time to be alone because I'd been caring for both of them at the same time.
Mm,
And I got angry that she had stolen the few years that I had with Steve where he was also healthy.
mm,
And I carried that anger around, I guess, for about three months. I was every now and then I would just well up with rage at what had been taken from me. But in the meantime, I was in the final throes of caregiving because Steve, once his mother died, he started to get really ill. I don't know if she's what kept him going. It's certainly possible,
yeah.
but
Maybe
there
she
were
didn't give him permission to die.
he gave her permission finally. Um, they they did everything that they could, they thought. The two sons did everything that they thought that they could, except say, Mom, it's okay, we'll be fine.
Mm,
It's okay, you can go. Let go, you're in too much pain. So many people do that, and it gets done. The person on the other end gets the message, relaxes,
mm,
and they know they really want to let go, and they do let go. But with with Steve and his brother, they said, "Well, my mother's a fighter, wouldn't you say?" And I'd say, "Absolutely, your mother's a fighter." But you know, you've got everyone, all the nurses, all the doctors telling you that this is what's going on, and you're both denying it.
yeah.
She's not going. I told them straight out. I did not believe she was going to turn around. I mean, at 93, she had decided to go through her third round of
Oh
chemotherapy.
my.
3 rounds of
For
chemo
who? For the kids?
for herself, I guess. She didn't have grandchildren, much to her chagrin, but she had family came to see her from everywhere while she was in the hospital. Everybody wanted to say their goodbyes, but the day before she died, she had that. It, it happens to so many people that one really great day of clarity where she was back to her old self and
Hmm.
you know totally healthy, totally present, totally grateful, and the next day she died.
Yeah.
And of course, when she had rebounded that way for one night, I told you so. Mom rebounded. She's getting better. And
Yeah.
I just kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to take it away from them,
Sure.
but I mean, I wasn't surprised the next day. I started a fight the next day for them to tell her it was okay.
Yeah.
And Steve, the older brother, finally did, and it made a
Yeah.
difference.
Well, when most people realize that being angry doesn't really help anything, it might help them feel better, get it off their chest, because they
Yeah.
internalized it.
Well, like that's my journaling
Yeah.
when I was caring for my mom. The journaling was primarily, putting how I was feeling,
Mm-hmm.
getting it out because there was no one to talk to anymore. My father was gone. I didn't know my
Mm-hmm.
mother's neighbors. I could talk to the nurses a little bit, and I was on the phone with the doctors all the time, but that's not the same thing as having a confidant or,
Right.
some kind of friend or social worker
Or
or
a
whatever.
caregiver group,
Yeah. No.
support group.
Um,
So a lot of people, after their anger, the very next thing that they would feel after they've resolved that anger is not going to help is they get depressed. And that's the most concerning grief emotion because, you know, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain and
well,
Robin Williams.
you're assuming they were going through the 5 steps.
Yeah, because you don't always go through them in that order. Sometimes people get depressed right out in the front,
Well,
and
yeah,
they go back and forth.
well, sometimes they get depressed and they don't even realize just what they're doing.
Yeah.
Hey, this is going to be a real final step, folks.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that's the grief process. It's unpredictable. Most people go through it in those orders, but not necessarily.
yeah, I
And
mean, I don't necessarily think suicides go through it the same way.
yeah, I
Um,
think I think people who are suicidal might have a clinical depression issue
yes,
that, they're not even grieving. They're just chemically
depressed.
imbalanced in the brain, and that's why I always say that they should need to see the doctor, if they're
Right,
spending days in bed and don't want to get
right,
up, don't want to dress, don't want to
yep,
bathe, don't want to eat, or
right.
they eat too much, or they,
They
uh,
binge.
yeah, just the opposite.
Yep.
They need to see the doctor, and everyone is, not everyone, but many people who I've discussed about, who I know have problems with clinical depression,
Yeah.
they don't want to see a doctor. And I said, but, this can be solved with
Right.
antidepressants. Oh, no, I don't want to take drugs. And they're equating drugs with like cocaine and marijuana and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's not that kind of a drug. It's just, to restore the chemical imbalance in the brain. I mean, my wife um, started taking just a very low dose of Zoloft when she had her stroke.
Hmm.
Because, when you have a stroke and you lose all that stuff, you tend to be depressed.
It's real, folks.
And they says, don't leave her medication out. And I says, really? Are we down to that? Says,
Well,
well,
you don't know if you're
yeah.
down to that.
Women like pills and men like guns. So we
Right.
tell, if it's a man, we tell him don't leave guns around the house. If it's a woman, we say don't leave pills around the house. And that was an eye-opener for me.
Hmm.
But even today, it's been 21 years, she still takes a low dose of Zoloft. And every now and then, we wonder, God, does she still need this? And so she'll run out and maybe go 3 or 4 days before she gets it if it's a weekend and the doctor didn't renew the prescription or
Right.
something. And she'll just slowly start
Kicks in.
crying. She just has a lower tolerance when things don't go right.
Yeah.
A shorter patience. It just takes the edge off of life.
Well, I'm clinically depressed.
Are you?
I have been Oh God, I guess since the 70s. And I've been on a lot of different medications.
Well, the
I used to
70s,
be one of those people who self-medicated,
yeah,
if you
a
know what
lot
I
of people do
mean.
that, sure.
And I mean, I've been clean and sober now for 33 years.
Do you still take an
So
antidepressant?
antidepressants and anti-anxiety, yeah,
Mm,
absolutely.
yeah, and so
Um,
they don't make you feel weird, do they? Like you're
d-
high?
no, not me, because I have the constitution of a horse as far as medication goes, but
They
no
just
one who
restore the
knows, no
chemical
one that
balance in
I'm
the
ever
brain.
with, no one, if I'm being properly medicated, and and I am, but until I finally got to the correct dosage, there were times that people would say, "You're not. There's something wrong with you. It's not you."
Mm.
But once we found the right cocktail, um, no one knows that I'm doing anything.
How long does that process take? Because some people will get impatient and they'll say, "No, this is the third medication. They still don't know. I'm just giving up." I mean, how long can it take to find the right medication or the right dose?
Well, I know I still have to tickle my dose every now and then. Like February is a very bad month. In the East, so February is a very bad month because of the weather being shut
Mm.
indoors and the amount of light that you get. There are all sorts of external things you can do, like buying lamps that you sit with for a certain number of minutes a
Mm.
day that compensate for the lack of sunlight that you have. Um, I've never had to do that, but I I function extremely well. Sometimes I feel depressed, but I know, okay, Adrienne, you're a depressed person, and you know that you're going to come out of this fast. So just go on.
Well, listen, we're going to take another break, so don't go
Hmm.
away. We'll be right back.
One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is about Charlene, a stroke survivor. Back in 1996, Charlene was a healthy, normal, very active 52-year-old woman whose amazing talents resemble that of both a Martha Stewart and a Wonder Woman. But all that changed when she suffered a massive stroke that left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. Who am I? My name is David. I've had the privilege of being Charlene's husband since 1975. We had a wonderful fairy tale storybook-like courtship that culminated in our marriage a year later. Charlene had just come out of a marriage where after 10 years, she received 2 black eyes and a broken nose by her former husband when he came home high on speed. Charlene believed in no second chances of any kind for abuse, so she left. Finding herself all alone in the world with her 5 and 10-year-old daughters Cynthia Lorraine and Deborah Lynn, she started raising them by herself for the next 2 years. Then fate brought us all together. After falling in love with Charlene, Cindy, and Debbie, our love then produced Rebecca Elizabeth. We had a wonderful, normal life for the next 20 years. But today, things are very different for everyone. One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is the amazing story of a woman's fight to survive all that life had thrown her way. Everyone who knows Charlene is thoroughly amazed at how she lives day by day, month by month, year by year, and with a smile on her face and hope in her heart that everything is going to be okay. Her faith in God is her foundation in this hope, that everything happens for a reason, and what doesn't kill her will make her stronger. So pick up your copy of One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships today. You won't be disappointed. Available everywhere.
So we're back. And the only thing we have left to talk about is acceptance. Acceptance is a wonderful place. I know that it's accepting the new normal, you know. Charlene, I wondered if she would ever get over her depression because, you know, God, it's she lost so much, and the language. I mean, that's the thing that separates us from the animals, and I don't even know if I would have gotten over my grief as quickly as she did. I say quickly, 2.5 years, as if that's quick. But she just decided one day that she's still alive, and God must have a purpose for her. He would have taken her life, and so she just decided she's going to do everything she did before. A challenge.
And she
It's like
did,
with one arm and one leg tied behind your back and with duct tape
right?
over your mouth. And she did, and now she makes us normal people look like whiners and complainers, and she's like a one-arm wallpaper hanger. And most people, with all of their faculties, all of their limbs, all of their speech, they cannot do what she can do. You know?
Mhm.
I mean, she just built 2 dolls today. I posted it on Facebook, two of these ceramic dolls, and they look amazing.
Mhm.
And she just put a dinner party on for 6 of us 3 weeks ago, and the food was amazing. Food you would find at, at a fine restaurant like Tavern on the Green, if it's still a fine restaurant, or the Russian Tea Room, or someplace like that you would pay, $200 per person. And so she, the question is, what is your acceptance? When did you reach what acceptance would mean for you, Adrienne, through your grief?
Well, I guess the best place to go through that is Steve's death. When we went to the hospital to get our regular blood tests and checkups and all that stuff, and the current treatment, he was in chemo and radiation at the time, and they told us there was nothing more that they could do. And we both got pretty silent because we'd both been waiting for the time that happened. And we went home and accepted it together. And we cried a lot. Sharing the grief was part of my acceptance of the fact that, well, the end is near. It's nearer than it ever has been, and it was a matter of 3 weeks. It wasn't very long, but once he died, I mean, I was with him night and day. I stayed with him at the hospital for 2 full weeks, and you never knew what the evening would bring. And I had to accept all of this erratic behavior from him, which he had not exhibited until the last 3 weeks of his life. He became he got dementia, and our internist feels it had nothing to do with the cancer. It was purely a matter of that's how the only way that Steve could deal with it was to escape into like his own fantasy world. So I sort of lost a lot of him and was still functioning, but I was accepting what was going on all along, every step of the way.
You think the dementia was a conscious acceptance of just letting go or something?
Well, that the doc it's your subconscious.
Subconscious. Yeah. Sometimes we don't have
and
control of that.
he didn't have control over it, but he may have sent enough
less
messages
painful. Yeah.
to become demented and not deal with it.
Yeah.
When
I
when
can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. I can deal. All right, I'll fix
right,
that. That
right.
makes sense.
Nobody's asking you to deal with it. Okay. Um,
Yeah, be careful what you say.
but it was like as long as I was there, he was okay.
Yeah.
But if I went to talk to somebody who was sitting in the waiting room, he would go crazy a little
Mm.
bit. Um, they
Must have been
called
hard on you.
two, yeah, they called two doctors in, psychiatric doctors, and they came to tell me that my husband was in a state of dementia and they were going to have to move him to another facility. And I let them know I had been preparing for 6 years for him to die, but I had never been prepared for him to go to another facility where they were treating patients with dementia who had
Yeah.
terminal cancer. And I moved him to another hospital and he died 2 days later, which was much better than going to a mental hospital. I
Oh,
mean,
so you went against their
I
recommendation.
went to total. What was I going to do? Buy him
Sure.
another week? 2 weeks?
Sure.
I mean, let him die with some dignity.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, my sister lost her husband. It's been over 2 years now, 2.5 years. And she's really been having trouble, dealing with everything reminds her of him. She didn't know if she should sell the house and just going back and forth. And then finally, I haven't spoken to her in a few weeks. And then today I spoke to her and she goes, "Yeah, I'm seeing somebody." And I said, "Oh, great. Yeah, we keep running into each other at the store. And we figured, well, maybe we should see each other
good.
because, and it's hard to believe she would do that because she was grieving so much, but I guess she's finally reached her acceptance.
Oh, I had a funny experience on Fire Island. Because I've been widowed for 7 years, 7+ years, and I'm active in the community. Uh,
In Fire Island?
I've become the widow whisperer. I mean, the number of women that come up to me to say, "How long has it been since you've been
Hmm.
widowed? And have you considered dating?" And it's like at first I think they're looking to fix me up with somebody.
Yeah,
And
matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match.
no, I'm not looking. I have a boyfriend. I've moved on. I
Oh, this
have
was
a boyfriend.
this was after you had your boyfriend.
Oh yeah, okay, this is now. This is this summer. And
Didn't
a
they
lot of
see that he was there at Fire Island with you?
he's there with me a lot, but these people apparently didn't realize that we were together.
Oh.
Um, I mean, there were a lot of women in their 80s who've been widowed on fire in my community.
So how long did it take you to start dating?
2.5 years I started
That seems
really
to be the
looking.
magic number.
Well, I started, in all honesty, I put up at Match.com and a JDate profile 4 days after Steve died because
What?
I needed some comic relief.
Just did
I
it out of
just
fun,
wanted
huh?
to see what was out there because I mean I adored Steve. He was so bright and so funny and so good looking and so this and so that. No one was going to be able to match him for a good while.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, what do I want? And I took the time to figure it out, but I was still looking at all of these silly people on the dating sites. And I say silly people because you've got men who've been on vacation, let's say, at the Great Pyramids, right? And the photograph that they post is a picture of the pyramid with them standing in front of it. So they're about the size of a pinhead. And you have no idea what they look like if that's the only picture that they put up. And
They
there are
don't
some
want you to see
people
what
who,
they look like.
yeah, I mean, it's really, really silly. I could write an article about those pages, but Um, I am very fortunate insofar as the first person that I dated after Steve died, I'm still with.
Wow, good for you.
I,
No
I,
no
I
rebound for you.
no, it wasn't. I was very careful. Um, I mean, I never expected the first person that I went out with to be the person that I ended up with, but
Yeah.
we went out a few times and I was on my best behavior. Uh,
I
when,
assume you had fun.
well, not we didn't have fun. That's why I was on my best behavior.
Oh.
Um, I mean, I wasn't. I was every bit a lady for the first first few days, but once I got to know him, I wanted to get to know somebody.
I
I
see.
had promised myself, um, there's not going to be any one night stands for me.
Right.
That's not what I was looking for. Because I could have, I could have looked on the sites that have one night stands, but I wasn't into that. That wasn't me. So,
Well, it's hard to believe we've gone through a whole hour talking about grief. So
mm,
why don't you tell people how we can get a hold of you?
well, it's Adrienne, ADRIENNE, at thecaregiverspace.com.org, like
.org.
right behind me, thecaregiverspace.org. And that's the website, and you can get to our Facebook page and all our other pages from there. All the links are posted.
And I'm at caregiverdave.com. And if you want 3 free gifts, go to freeburnoutbook.com and you will get a free book about overcoming unbelievable hardships. You'll get my welcome pack about how to get plugged into being a caregiver, and you will get a free quiz on are you a candidate for burnout?
I want one. I want the middle one. The
Just go
kid. I
to
want to see the kid.
freeburnoutbook.com.
Okay. I will.
Welcome to our group, Adrienne. And with that, we'll say good night, goodbye, good day, good afternoon, wherever it is you are, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Caregivers Caregiver radio program with Dave Nassaney.